Hello, everyone, and welcome back to RHAP. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and we are here today to finally talk about the finale of the Getaway season 1. I don't know. We have, of course, a very special guest to talk about everything that happened here on the finale. It's Sam. How you doing, Sam?
Hello, I'm doing good. It's fascinating to have the hard transition from you discussing to you presenter voice setting up the podcast. It was within seconds. It was very impressive.
You know what?
This is only for me, bad for the audience, but you know.
It's probably not even the most dramatic version because I am like recovering from an illness. So I'm like, my energy levels are not quite where they might normally be. But I always wonder because we have like these discussions before the podcast starts. And I'm always like, I feel like I conserve my energy for the podcast. And then as soon as it starts, I'm like, I'm ready to go. It might be a little jarring sometimes.
Well, I also sympathize because like on our podcast, that's my job. And it's always so awkward to go.
I love your intros.
Well, the execution is awkward, but also like me as the one doing it, it's awkward because it's like we're just like chatting with like people I chat to constantly and like suddenly have to do like super formal intro while they're all listening and I hate it. In addition to, of course, the thousands of actual people also listening to it. But for some reason, the 2 people are really 3 people on the Zoom call. It's more pressure, you know, live feedback.
Yes, highly recommend Sam's intros. But of course, also with us, it's Sasha. How you doing, Sasha?
Yes, we made it to the finale. I can't believe it. I'm ready, happy to also have my customer service voice on, and ready to go for this podcast.
Yeah. The finale, the episode, I think that we've all been looking forward to. Some great, I think, headline of the finale. Some great reactions from the final 3. Honestly, if anything, I think Forign's reaction I almost liked more than the final reaction.
Oh, one
is so correct. Good. But in general, some great reactions to the twist. We had an interesting format for the final challenge, and some final a final vote out as well. So lots to talk about.
I've like replayed the final reveal reaction so many times because like I think especially seeing Steven, like you can just see the emotions on his face so clearly because like which personally for me, hopefully Steven doesn't listen to this, like I really like out of all the contestants, Steven, you know, I don't actually even know if this is super clear to the audience. So he's a card counter now, and that's like what we portray him as. But like his background getting into card counter was he was a street magician. He performed on the streets of London doing magic, which not only is a magician, but like that's like doing it with a live audience all around you. Like that's like the biggest like misdirection kind of thing. It's like the fact that that we got Steven, we had him fully believing he was the snitch all the way to the end. That for me was what I was most proud of. Just because like it felt like he was the one who was going to get it. Of course, we saw that with Patch, but like I was really worried about Steven because like all of the tricks, they were just simple. It was just like simple principles of magic, just like misdirection and stuff like that. But yeah, so that's why I really like that scene.
I think it helped with Steven that he was immediately put on the back foot in the game. And so I think so much of his focus was just on surviving and then executing on the social strategy portion.
Yeah.
And having to rely on Georgia as much as he did and like navigating that situation where it was just like succeeding in that area was enough of like a job for him that he wasn't thinking elsewhere as much.
And like I could really tell, at least I felt like I could really tell that like he was just constantly thinking. Just like he was like, especially on the last day where we got really strict about separating the contestants on the last day when we were not actively filming. And we had a lot of, this was a very complex shoot day. So like we had a lot of downtime. But whenever he was by himself, he was like, he was not like talking with his minder or anything. He was just like, I noticed he was like heads down, just thinking. And to be honest, I was wondering if he was like pissed at us or something because like he was just like so stoic outside of the competition. But I think he was just genuinely like like strategizing so much. And Georgia to a similar level. Like to be honest, both of them felt like very deserved winners to me because they really played the game to the fullest.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely crushed the social strategy angle. Very funny that they both thought that they were screwing each other over in the process because they were so loyal to each other.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, classic. I mean, this is straight out of Survivor, really, is like a 6-person tribe and then a duo able to really divide and
Mm-hmm.
conquer and just like take everyone out and get to the end of at least that portion of that game together. But like with the added element of the amount of guilt he was feeling about betraying her. And I could be wrong, but I feel like maybe not as much guilt on her end
Yeah,
about betraying
that's what my note said. My note said, "Be a Georgia," because she said, "Well, he'll get it. He'll say GG's. He'll be okay." Meanwhile, Steven is like acting like literally he's gone into her bank account, taken all the money out himself, and like scammed her to be have no money left ever. And Georgia's just like, "Ah, shucks. I came here to win,
Yeah.
Queen."
Well, Georgia just is like she constantly, all across the board is just like super extroverted and super friendly to everyone.
Mhm.
So I'm not surprised that people had a tough time betraying her in this game because she certainly did this in the game, and I certainly feel like she, it's like I don't want to say she was friendly to screw them over because like she would always have been friendly. She's always friendly. However, I really felt like Georgia knew how to use that and
Mhm.
how to leverage emotions. I mean, all the way back to some of the earliest episodes, you see that she is the one who really brings up like uh I really have enjoyed my time with y'all. Like I feel like we've gotten so close so quick and stuff like that. Like I feel like she was the one to not necessarily like make up emotions but bring the emotions to the surface because I think she knows, given her background as a therapist, she knows how powerful that can be.
Yeah.
Rooted in truth, but like making that front and center.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, Georgia crushed. I think,
Oh yeah.
like, I guess I would say Georgia was probably one of the in terms of, like, actively sabotaging challenges, she was not, like, the star of sabotaging. She was always doing
Hmm.
well in challenges, but in terms of the social game, in terms of the social strategic game, she was head and shoulders, I think, above everyone else. Like, she
Yeah.
was so dominant. It
From
was
Yeah.
ba
minute 1, right?
yeah,
That's what
from
felt exciting,
the
I
very
think.
beginning, getting Patch and Matt to turn on each other, or Patch to
Exactly.
turn on Matt, pulling Steven to the end. It was her decision which of the 2 people, and even if she had been the sole snitch, it would have just been a decision between which person do I want to lose next to me. Like, she
Hmm.
really crushed it.
Yeah, I always felt like Georgia was in control. And
Mhm.
therefore, uh, I kind of feel, to be honest, like anyone that Georgia had formed an alliance with would have won. Um, and I think Stephen was the right choice for her of who to partner with, considering that um, from a good bit earlier, Forign had some pretty obvious things, some obvious slip ups, let's say, and sabotage and stuff like that. And to be honest, I think just constantly played suspicious. Um, and Patch obviously in episode 3 became very vulnerable. So like I really felt like, even beyond the on camera moments, it always felt to me like Georgia was in control and that the game was kind of within her grasp.
Yeah. Uh, and speaking of, I think my favorite snitch, my favorite sabotager by far was definitely Foreign. I mean, He was just always finding a way to sabotage, even in moments where honestly, especially in moments where it didn't make sense.
Mhm.
And we'll get to the challenge of the episode, but like right from minute one when he's hiding puzzle pieces, I was like, yes, thank you, Forign. And that was a super effective way of sabotaging too.
Oh yeah.
He just always seemed so down to embrace his role, which I think is part of why I think he was probably he seemed the most disappointed that he wasn't the sole snitch. Because he
Yeah.
really did own that role more than anyone else.
He definitely did. Yeah. I mean, we certainly saw some good sabotaging by Steven, but
Yeah.
Steven found some of the much more kind of, I don't know, strategic ways of doing so. Whereas like Forign just went for it,
Mhm.
which I love. He just went for it, even when it put him at a bit of risk, which at least as a show producer, I really like because that's what makes things fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what I felt really excited is that, again, knowing what we know, right? Like Monday morning quarterbacking for sure. In that you're like, it's so obvious that Forign is a snitch. And if you're a snitch and you're seeing Forign, you're like, why aren't we teaming up together, Pat? Right? Or why aren't we at least saying that out loud? But again, when you are the main character of a story, it's so hard to be like, well, I'm glad Forign exists because he's gonna take the heat off of me. So I just found him and his like character, and obviously then the concept of the show. That's why it works because you have folks like Forign. I think it's just every single thing about Forign is so funny.
What did y'all? Maybe I'm jumping ahead, but what did y'all think of his game of 20 questions, or rather, not really 20 questions, kind of infinite questions?
Okay, so I do want to talk about this. So
Yes.
obviously we start the episode. There's just 3 of them left. There's one more
Hmm.
challenge, and the way this challenge is set up is that there's 4 stages, and the fastest time in each stage gets an extra vote in the coming vote out. And so that's very valuable. But of course, you as the snitch, this is a huge amount of money to be getting $3,000. You want to make sure that you go over 3.5 hours so that the snitch can add that $3,000 to their pot. Um, Very quickly for me, I was like, the Steven and Georgia, or Steven at least, was like, okay, Georgia and I both need to win at least one of these, so that we prevent Forign from getting the votes. Because my immediate thing was, oh, if I win 3 rounds, it doesn't even matter if they think I'm the snitch. I dominate. They can't outvote me. It's 4 votes to 3. So
Yep.
the clear strategy is try as hard as you can to win the first 3 rounds. And if you do, or if you feel like you do, then you can just sit down and say, sorry, I'm not going to finish the rest. And then you can outvote them and you win the game. So it was very funny to me that Forign winning the first one, I was like, oh, he's got a shot at this, but then immediately tanks the second one. You know, giving up this vote. But of course, that's very Forign. But like, it was very funny to me that this is the one he decided to do because it seemed like he wanted to make himself throw up so that he would have the defense of I threw up for this challenge.
He does he hate Patch? That's what I must know because you can't. There's no other reason. Nothing else makes sense to me. Because here's the thing: I think they really care about the show. They care about y'all as production. So right, they're not gonna just maybe do the easiest thing and then sit down at the end, right? Even though I agree, Taran. I think I would try to math it out, even though I'm not a math girly. But the fact that he is just on this pendulum, going back and forth and making Patch go through it, give Patch workers comp because this is crazy what he did.
I think the swing seems like tons of fun.
Yeah,
You'll ne-
compared to the one you had to do a
Granted,
bunch
you
of
were on the
times.
Tower of
Yeah.
Terror. Yes.
I've never ridden that swing. I didn't, we were super compressed, and this is actually only about 50 minutes away from where I live. Conveniently, we scheduled the show to finish within easy driving distance of where I live. And I still never made it on that swing, and I want to. I envy Pat. There's great views, good swing. Getting a lot of cat action.
Everyone buy your Kellis plushie.
But yeah, no, they definitely does not hate Patch, but I actually genuinely don't remember like to what degree Forign was purposefully sabotaging this. Like I think a good bit, but like eventually it just gets like.
Do you really think that he couldn't get pizza? And he just kept saying beef jerky over and
I genuinely can't remember.
Yes.
And I'm not sure if I ever really knew whether or not Forign was actively sabotaging that game of 20 questions. Because also I didn't do the confessionals. I was somewhere else. But I don't remember him saying in the confessionals that he was actively sabotaging that. Do y'all remember that?
I feel like they asked him and then he gave like a dodgy answer. That was like, what do you mean? Like I don't remember exactly what he said, but I remember it feeling like he didn't actually confirm or deny.
Yeah. I like, I mean, he genuinely threw up. So like, I'm personally somewhat unconvinced that I don't know. I don't want to discredit his effort, but like, would someone really sabotage to the level of being so uncomfortable that they throw up?
I feel like he did want to throw up. I don't know. That's just the vibe I got. But I'm not sure. He definitely didn't ask any questions the first go around.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
He also
my notes say that he's throwing, but I don't know if again that's me deciding that.
He also definitely answered beef jerky at least twice.
Yes.
He did. Yeah. But like he immediately went to the least logical strategy, which was just like listing foods. Like he got to the fact that like it's a food and then just decided to list all foods.
I mean, it was also like his answer was pizza. It's like that is like one of the default foods.
Yeah.
Like that's
he could have gotten to that.
With the question, one of the things was like, can it be frozen? And Pat says yes. What else can be both made? Like, nah. I believe that maybe he didn't. I'm in between now. I don't believe that he fully maybe was like, I'm gonna yak. Like that is the point of this. But I do believe that there was I'm just gonna take forever to do this. Cause why not? It's I need to sabotage. So it could be a byproduct of what he was trying to do, no pun intended. And it's all out there. And I think he's like, great, we're now going to use that because he doesn't have an alpaca spit, okay? He doesn't. So this is his alpaca spit.
Yeah. Part of the reason that I don't know is because this day was like so operationally complex that we always had like multiple things happening at the same time. So like I was not at what was being filmed at every moment. And therefore, and also like we didn't have time necessarily to take every contestant away and debrief with them because it was genuinely, we were so, it was a lot. There was a point in that day where I didn't think we were going to finish. Because also the other BTS thing, I know y'all like BTS, is we were supposed to film on a completely different ride. And they only told us like the night before that ride was not working. We were, what the challenge was going to be, I'm kind of disappointed we had to cut this. It was going to be on an alpine coaster. Do y'all know what an alpine coaster is? It's like it's kind of like a normal roller coaster, but you're on like, they have a lot of these at like ski resorts and stuff. You're on like it's like a single thing and then you break yourself. It's like you're on a little cart.
Oh yeah.
Attached to. Yeah. So it's basically like a roller coaster that goes for quite a while through the woods and you break yourself. And sometimes it's in like a tube and it has wheels. It was like one of those things. And it takes like a good 10 minutes to do, to go all the way down and then come back up the return track. So in this case, what we were going to do was put a bunch of signs on the side of the roller coaster, the side of the track. And it was going to be like, the first sign would be like 5. Then the second one would be plus sign. The third one would be 8. And then like divided, and then 2. And then like just all sorts of math equations that would lead to a specific number answer. And if they didn't get it, they would have to go back and do it again. And ultimately would probably take a bunch of tries. And I was really disappointed because I really liked that challenge. I thought it'd be a lot of fun. But then night before, we get an email saying it's not working. And so we had to just completely redo what we were going to do. And they didn't have many rides open because this was still in their kind of winter operating season, when they have pretty few of their stuff open versus the summer. So we wanted to do laser tag. We wanted to just like do laser tag versus the eliminated contestants. We're just basically like, if you, some sort of configuration, just like if you beat the eliminated contestants, you move on, which would have been fun. The problem is lasers, camera lenses, not very compatible. So
that was my first thought. I was like, how do you film that though?
Yes. So especially considering like our A camera was like a $30,000 camera, and did not want to risk that. And so we were like, as we were filming the day before, I guess we learned about this a little bit before the evening of, we learned it like midday the day before. It's like while we were filming at like that abandoned town at Cisco, Valentina, our DP, was texting with her laser guy. She's got a laser guy. And trying to get some answers on like, we got like the specific laser specs from the park, and we're like, she was sending it to her laser guy to figure out whether it'd be okay for the camera sensor. And ultimately felt like the answer was no. So we had to pivot once again. And that is how we got to the
arts and crafts.
No, we were always going to do that.
Oh, okay.
It is how we got to the swing, I believe. I think that was. I think the swing was ultimately the last minute choice. Am I getting that right? No, it was either the swing or the drop tower. I should really remember this. It was like,
I mean, the drop tower I think was one of the best ones.
Yes.
Actually, here's what I think it was. I believe the card challenge was supposed to be on the swing. We moved that to the drop tower, and then we created the 20 questions thing out of nowhere for the swing. I believe that was it. So I think the drop tower was what we hadn't planned on. Yeah, that sounds right. Which I'm glad we got in because it was a lot of fun. However, the Alpine coaster would have been a lot of fun too. So anyway, that led to it was a late night the night before this for the crew, for the non-hired crew, the salaried crew, basically, who did not have a contractually obligated rest period. So we were up until rather late. I think we left at 5 a.m. in the morning, and we were out in like the hotel parking lot until like midnight. Doing both like figuring this final stuff out and also just like building prop stuff, which really annoyingly giving you a lot of BTS. You saw how one thing that was probably confusing in this edit, and to be honest, I wish we could have cut out, was like, you see them getting on the gondola and they just have a bunch of like random things in their hands. Do you remember seeing that? Yeah. And it probably seemed a bit awkward, to be honest, in the edit. So what that was that originally we were going to give them like, I think it was about like 15 or 20 minutes at the bottom of the gondola to just like fiddle around with all these different things, because they each, or some of them, correlated to what the challenge was going to be. We gave them like a puzzle. We gave them well, originally it was going to be like math flashcards for the other one, and like various other things like that, and also some red herrings. And we were going to have them like mess around with that and like form some theories about what the challenge was going to be. But the second we pull into the parking lot, I get a call from, I was with the everything except for the picture car and myself and sound guy and driver for the van. Everyone else had gone in advance that day to the location to prep. So we pull up after them in the parking lot. And like the second I get there, I get a call that it's like fire drill. Okay, they've just told us we have to be out of the caves by 10:45. We gotta go. And basically like the timing changed in a way that was unexpected because the first thing was going in the cave. And they needed to get on with their day with like cave tours and stuff because that was like that's the core of their thing. And so we had to basically dump that as a thing. And what's really annoying is like those tables that we put them on were just the most annoying, like Amazon, like worse than IKEA. Like, and what was so bad about them is like there was a way you could get to be like 95% done and yet have made it and everything seemed fine until like you put it together and it's like, oh no, this is wrong. And it had like so many pieces.
That should have been the challenge.
It really should have, because it was like 11:30 at night. I was desperately tired in a hotel parking lot, sitting on the asphalt, thought I had gotten done with my table. And then I put it together and it was wrong. And that was just about the worst thing that ever happened.
Oh, you better than me, because I would have broken it. That's my problem.
Yeah. And ultimately that table was in shot for like 5 seconds.
So did you like, take all frustration out on said table?
No.
Oh, you bet. Wow. Good person right here, y'all.
Yeah. No, it's all right.
See, I watch enough Real Housewives to where many tables would have been flipped.
Yeah. Yeah, it was anyway, so that I forget why I even mentioned that, but that was really annoying because like that was to be honest, in retrospect, absolutely we should have assembled those tables before we left on the road, and if we were smart, but we're not. Yeah, anyway.
But then we wouldn't have this fun story. So
that's true.
What was interesting to me about this, especially this final challenge, and how much sort of setup it required, and like all of the different people that were required to like be in different places, is that this is probably like the closest thing to The Amazing Race.
Oh my God. I was thinking that the whole time.
Yeah.
I was like, great. Yeah. And now there's going to be a memory challenge at the end, culminating everything that they did.
What I'll say is I always try to find some way of getting a memory challenge into jet lag. It is like one of my favorite Amazing Race challenges. It's always fun. But I
thought maybe there'd be a quiz on the things you gave them.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Yeah, I would do terribly at the memory challenge though, because as you can tell from this, like once I filmed the thing, memory just out the window.
Well, when you're in it, I think you're more likely to like, I don't know if again,
you say that, but like I'm in jet lag and I can't remember anything.
Listen, no one's saying after. It's just in those 3 days you gotta remember.
Fair, yeah.
Yeah, if I were to do anything like this, like when I go on The Amazing Race, I'm taking notes about everything. I'm literally like, what shoelaces did Phil have on? I will be taking notes of all of it. Listen, we've had greeter questions. We've had so many memory challenges. But to me, they're so fun to watch because you're just like, oh, do I remember? How would I do at this? So a memory challenge is chef's kiss for me.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this the first puzzle challenge because I think of Forign, who just like I was just so happy to see him hiding a piece. And initially I was like, oh, classic Forign, he's sabotaging himself because like he really needs these votes, I think. But then it was like, no, he was hiding Steven's pieces. And I was like, I didn't even realize he had his hands on Steven's pieces, but that's amazing because it makes Steven look like the saboteur while also allowing himself to win the vote in that round. And also like meaning that he will be sabotaging. He will be like adding to the time. It was my favorite. I think the most effective by far sabotage the Forign.
Yeah. Well, I also thought that was an interesting moment where Steven was so engulfed by this reality of him being the only snitch that his default reaction was this was a production flub, which
Yeah, like, oh, this is
fair
good
enough.
for me.
Yeah.
My British eyes, they can't miss.
Yeah. And because like I think, you know, it was natural to assume that like, oh, we must have just missed a piece. But we definitely did not, because what I will say is we were up until 11 p.m. the night before in the parking lot putting those puzzles together. And one of the many moments that almost broke me was when we thought we were missing pieces. Once again, another thing that we should have done in advance. However, we picked those up from a prop maker in Vegas. So we didn't really have a chance because we were already on location basically. But we thought we were missing it. And then we found for some reason, like 80% of the pieces were in one place and 20% were in another. But we were, for a moment, like really, we were about to lose another challenge. So anyway, that's to say, I knew all the pieces were there. And I love that. And I also love that, like, I didn't know until we got quite into the edit whether or not we had gotten footage of Forign, you know, hiding that. And especially of Steven walking right by.
Yeah.
And it was really nice to see that we got both parts, because, you know, there very much was a version in which we didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I thought
think
that was fantastic.
also human nature is that you're less likely to look up anyway. So to me, that's why it felt like such a good hack, because there's a moment in the edit where Steven's like screaming, "My British eyes, they cannot miss this. Impossible." But pause, and then it just like highlights, and it's just a spotlight on the piece above his head. Because as humans, you're just not gonna look up, which is such a fatal flaw we have. But here we are.
Yes, and also we had told them they were going to be on the ground, because
valid.
To be honest, we weren't supposed to put them up there, because like it's a cave. I mean, they put us in a section that was like some of the less preserved caves there. They had another area that was like much more like they would not have let us do what we did basically. But still, you know, if you've ever been on a cave tour, the first thing they say is never touch the cave walls. And therefore we didn't want to put stuff in a place where you might kind of have to touch the cave walls, because apparently they always like the oil on your hands is bad for preserving the cave, because, you know, they've been at this for millions of years. You don't want to mess that up with a game show.
Yeah.
Too valid.
Makes sense. So they of course do the 20 questions. We've already kind of talked about that. Then they get to again, this is probably my favorite challenge, the drop ride, whatever it was. And I gotta say, Sam, I think that you were a key part of making this so fun. Because them sitting in there with you and just like, I'm a huge fan of like dry humor. I love your delivery. I watched you on Ludwig's thing, and I
Unpaid intern, yeah.
I loved Unpaid Intern. Yeah, I loved your bits there. But you just sitting in there, just like 5 of clubs, 6 of hearts. It's just, it never got old.
No, and again, the way like Georgia is able to interact with you, I think that's what killed it for me. Because she's like, "You're evil. You're just evil," and you don't give a damn. You're like, great content for me.
It's my job.
More, please. Right? That's what I felt from you, which I bet she again, they're so kind, because I think Forign like cursed at you a little bit, was like, shut up. But they're so funny about it, because you can tell they're just being so respectful to you, and you just don't give a damn. The best is when you said, "So Forign, what was the colors?" And he earnestly tells you the colors, and you said, "Great." So it's actually, and then you just start to, oh my God, so evil.
That was one of the moments where I felt more bad, but it was my job. I had a role to fill. And that was something where like the night before we were talking about, like, hey, who's going to do this? And I was like, I want to do it, because the idea of riding a drop tower like 15 times in a row sounds awesome. And it was awesome. Although it definitely took like a bit of it was like an inverted curve. The first time was awesome. Second time was less awesome. The third time it just got like worse until you were used to it enough that it like got more awesome again. But Georgia remarks this too. It's like the second time, when you know what's about to happen, is a bit nerve-wracking. to the first where you don't. I mean, you know what's gonna happen, but you don't know how it feels. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I like that. I
Forign is
also
just so
I kept
funny.
forgetting what the different. Oh yeah, I kept forgetting what the different suits were because it's what like hearts, clubs. What's the clover thing? No, that's
Spade?
clubs.
No,
Oh,
it's gloves.
yeah.
Spades. I
Well,
feel like I kept
there's
forgetting
spades.
spades.
Spades and
Yeah,
diamonds.
which
Yeah.
I know is it's an easier job than what the contestants had to do, but yeah, that was tricky.
It didn't matter. I think you were just yapping, which was truly
Yeah.
perfection. And
Well, that was
my
part of the
thing,
reason why I started to throw in like other shapes, like triangles and stuff.
exactly.
Yeah.
And you didn't give a I think again, just because I feel like I would be a Georgia, like I love roller coasters, but I can't do just straight up and down stuff. I don't know why.
It's
I can
different.
do
Yeah.
upside down, no problem, but up and down, absolutely not. So the fact that you are so cool about it and you're just like, okay, and I'm just gonna keep messing with you, saying nonsense while they're, obviously going through it. I think that is what was a cherry on top where folks are just like, well, why aren't you like stressed? There was a moment where I think at one point Georgia holds your hand while you're going down, but outside of that, you were too calm. And I bet that I can't imagine how more frustrating, how added frustration that is.
Yeah,
It was a good ride. I love that ride. 15 times was the correct number.
Yeah, I said this to Sam before we started recording, but my favorite part of I think the entire episode was Forign right after Sam started doing the colors was Forign being like, I don't even like jet lag anyway.
So
Yeah.
good. Again, so relatable. Because yeah, I think I would be like, how do I psych you out and try to get you off your game? It's not gonna bother you. What
Yeah.
do you care?
Every time Forign came back, he had a different insult, and I forget exactly how many times he came back, but there was at least one that we cut out because I think it was a little too, I don't know, it was a little too much, which was, and I quote, "I'm going to write your full government name in my suicide note."
I'm sorry, I think that's so funny. I know it's not, but
It's creative.
it's like you show, so the line is like unaliving yourself, but not, shout out Odin again, but not Odin doing what he was doing to the alpacas.
Listen,
Oh my God, that made my
we're
life.
setting the right standards here.
Correct.
So I thought it was I think there's just a well-designed challenge with like even if you get it right the first time, you're probably not going to notice the colors, so you have to go back a
Yep.
second time, and it's always funnier when they go back a second time. Forign
They
came
were
really
not
close to
pleased.
winning this one, but ultimately was a couple seconds off, and it ultimately wouldn't have mattered because he didn't win the third heat either, or the fourth heat either, I should say. But I was like very intently watching because if Forign won that one and then won the next one, he would be able to
Mhm.
overturn whatever Georgia and Steven had cooked up. So I was like, oh man, the seconds are ticking by, and then they ticked right past Steven's time, and I was like, oh, that's it, it's over.
Yeah, that is the question I do have for Foreign. I don't know if like on the production side you notice, but in my mind, I was like, when you already voted your friend out, you have no ally. So even though I know that him and Georgia like had a connection, but it's so obvious Georgia and Steven are besties, like constantly. Again, back
I
to
think it
the
is to us, but I don't know if they saw that.
I mean,
what do you
they
mean?
basically they had almost no interaction. Certainly this day, because like off camera they were completely separated. In the van, they were completely. The last time they really had an opportunity to interact was the van at the very start of the day.
But if someone is going so hard, Steven, you did a great job, right? Alpaca challenge, it's over. They are a pair. If you are not, listen, if you don't stand for me in public, why are you talking to me in private? You see what I'm saying? So nothing else matters because strategy wise, I'm like, who are you claiming in public? Right? Relationship 101. Baby girl, if they don't claim you in public and only talk to you in private, they're not your man. They're somebody else's man. And that's what was happening here. So I said, you're not mine. And Patch is claiming me. Okay, him and that alpaca spit are claiming me. So I'm with Patch. That's all. That's what I like need to know more because he not for you, baby girl. Georgia just you see when you did a great job and then foreign voting Patch out. Oh boy, that was wild.
I obviously will, we'll hopefully have a chance to ask for in this, but I think this is where the everyone is a snitch did
True.
impact him because I think he really was banking on like Steven is just so suspicious. And I'll be able to I'll be able to place blame on Steven much easier than I am going to be able to place blame on Patch. And so at the end, you could see he came in with this strategy of like, hey, in the event we didn't get the snitch, remember, like you lose if you bring the snitch to the end. And Steven took so long on that puzzle thing. Like he had framed Steven just like he had framed Patch before and framed Dan before that. I think he was like really hoping to make that plan work for him again. And just didn't quite recognize that not only were Steven and Georgia locked in, but also everyone was a snitch. And so they didn't really care.
Oh, it was so good. It's just, I appreciate it. Just all of them. Their commitment to the bit was outrageous. And then being like, should we talk about Matt in the dress? What happened there? And they're like, he must have been the snitch. That's the point.
That was did Adam or Ben give you more context on that or Amy on their episodes?
Ben said he had a bunch of ideas for like how he wanted to mess with people, and that was just like kind of the thing that you landed on.
So we tried so hard to make them like basically like deal with that, like
care about it, yeah.
Yeah, like and honestly to probably a problematic level because like they mentioned that was actually the second time that we tried that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And Patch confirmed that he did see it the first time.
Yes.
Well.
Yeah. Which was like, it was crazy that I just feel like that some of them had seen it the first time and never even acknowledged it in the slightest, not to each other, not to us, not to anyone. And then they do it again. And then immediately again, it's just like nothing. Because like also the second time, like what we tried to do to be even more confusing was we did the dress and then we did Ben's clothes just to really fuck with people. Because like we couldn't think of any logical explanation for that. Like why would an eliminated contestant be why would Dan be in Ben's clothes? And like we thought it was just great, but like I can't even think of a reason. And we thought that was great just to like confuse them to that degree. And none of them even seem to really pick up on that part of it. And Ben's clothes are quite iconic. They're pretty notable.
Oh yeah. Patch did say in his like exit interview with he has big problems. He said, did they lie or did they not lie?
Yeah, Patch has issued a challenge.
Yes.
On did you actually lie to him?
Patch seems really convinced about that, and he's never really explained his full basis for that. But I mean, there certainly can be different interpretations of what lying means. But as far as I know, and we've been in this for quite a while now, there's never been something that is like, at least based on our interpretation of what something means, it is just the opposite of the truth. So very possible that there is an instance, but at least as of now, I'm not aware of it.
And I think if you go by Aes Sedai rules from the Wheel of Time, I think you're clear. I think that you found sufficient ways to get past the oath.
There's certainly some that are like, you really need like a lawyer's kind of point of view on it to consider it not lying. But like, we at least have our excuse for everything on why it's not a lie. And certainly some are iffier, I'd say, but we got as close as we possibly could on every instance to our definition of not lying. So if someone has something to point out as like directly something that is opposite of the truth and cannot ever be read in the way that is intended, I'd be happy to know. However, we're now 5 episodes in and I've yet to see that, so I'm not convinced that exists.
Oh boy, I think we should bring this to trial.
That's all I'm saying.
Fair.
A little court case. On,
yes, the Triple
offshoot
G.
show.
Yes, like Robot Gatekeep. It's happening.
Yeah.
We get to the final part of the challenge, and this one is taking a little while. Do you know? Were they genuinely struggling with this, or were they all just tanking?
They were all bombing it.
Yeah,
I mean, like it was tricky, but like Steven taking 50 something minutes, more than that actually. He totally could have gotten it.
Well, and he also found the alpaca binder. Which I was kind of sad that he got there first, because I do think it would have been very funny if somebody else found it.
I'm pretty sure we took out the actual info that could have implicated him, because I don't know if he realized that, but
he was so annoyed.
Yeah, because I remember that this was another parking lot activity the night before, where we basically gathered together all of our already used props. And I remember recognizing, well, we basically had a discussion. I was like, it'd be funny to put this, but we don't want to implicate Steven, because we told him we wouldn't, so we removed stuff. But clearly he didn't realize that, because like basically like it was the binder, but the actual entries in the envelopes I think weren't there.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, like there were certainly I mean, we play test. This was something that we did play test to a degree, and there were certainly ways to complete it far faster. However, they were just not very interested in doing so. Certainly Steven, first and foremost.
Yeah.
And I just love the production. All of y'all were like, well, we're bored. We're bored. What?
Well, we were. Well, because like we were on the clock against quite a lot of things. And the biggest one being that like the gondola to actually get up to where we were was going to close. And and there was a road that we could take. However, it would have been taking a really long time just to shuttle people up and down, because we could only take so many things up. So like we had to finish, and we also had to get to our final reveal shot that you'll hopefully notice is beautifully lit. And is like certainly like our most produced shot of the show. And that was one that like Valentina, our DP, really wanted to produce up. So we wanted to make sure that we had time there before we lost any sort of light, which we got very close to like, I mean, we spent like a good 60-90 minutes just on like the lighting setup for that. It was certainly our most complex in terms of all that sort of stuff. So we wanted to get there so we could get to that. So also so that we could wrap that, so we could get to our wrap party, which we were very late to, but it was still a nice time. They were very nice. They kept our food warm for like 2 hours. But like, yeah, genuinely, there were like genuine, like practical production constraints. Cause like the whole day had taken longer than we expected, partially just because they kept sabotaging so much, which I guess we should have expected. But like, I don't think we had like fully thought through how long it would take. Because the other part of this, that big BTS thing that gives some context, was how we actually had to run this, just given our production constraints and cameras available and stuff like that, is like we shot one stage and then we basically paused their time and then released them for the next, paused. So, we did the entire cave sequence, pause, reset, went to the swing, and then we let them onto the swing in the amount of time. It was complicated math given the number of stuff going on, but like we released them at the time with which they would have gotten there if the previous thing had continued. So like that really stacked things up, because like that offset, grew and grew and grew. So like by the time we got to like drop tower, there was quite a big spread in start times, and we had to do the entire sequence. And then there was a even bigger spread for the final thing. So it just like compounded. So the day took a while, and there was also a lot of like reset. It was also really hot, which was like also context for why crew was getting like, we got to finish. Cause like,
Yeah.
not only there was us, but like there were all the camera ops with easy rigs on in like really strong sun standing around for like an hour. It's like, you know, I kept the DP Valentina kept telling me like, don't worry about it as much, but I just felt bad for like the crew.
Oh.
They were getting sweaty and hot. And but no, I mean, it's amazing how much these camera crews like are used to going through for these sorts of shows. We're like, oh, this is nothing. It's like feels like a lot, but
I I did think a really cool part of the episode was, obviously we've seen a lot of behind the scenes. You have this sort of whole other version of the show going on that has the different
mm-hmm.
color grade. And that's obviously for a purpose because you're like tricking the contestants and stuff. But what I found really cool about this one in particular was just like the transparency with which you were responding to events happening in real time. And so, like, when Georgia is looking like she's feeling sick and might, not be feeling well for the thing, it's like, oh, well, we're concerned about her. Like, let's offer her the forfeit. Like, oh, is Forign really sick right now, or is he just playing it up? Like the kinds of like real time discussions that you were having to have in those moments, I thought was really fun
Yeah.
to incorporate into the actual episode.
Yeah, well, like another instance of like, I'm not sure that we had like fully thought through the competing dynamics of theme park ride and trying to sabotage and what that might lead to.
Yeah.
Which is like, in retrospect, that's obvious, but like, I think we just never really thought what that could lead to. And therefore, ultimately, like we knew it really didn't matter because we knew that they were going to go over ultimately. So we, in the moment, it was just like, okay, yeah, let's just offer them a forfeit option that is relatively minimal if they were going to lose that challenge anyway, which, obviously they were always going to, the people that were in the forfeit situation. So it was like, might as well, because, we don't want these contestants to have a miserable time. And also the other thing is that turns out that when you throw up on the ride, you have like, it's like the most junior staff. I felt so bad. They have to come out.
Yeah,
they have their whole protocol, and like they have to shut down the ride for a bit. Yeah, and I just like I felt really bad for them. So I didn't want to create more throw up after I saw that for the first time. Because also this park was like they were shutting down their rides for us to film for a certain amount of time, and like I didn't want to compound that by having not only this to keep going on, and like the people at the park were awesome, and we've actually already filmed another thing with them because they were such great filming partners. So like I just didn't want to disrupt their operations more. So like let's just do the forfeit, yeah, because it was within the context of what the show actually is, no real downside.
Yeah, on the show The Challenge, they in their finals when they have granted they're wild with what they do, and I don't know if it's safe, but not the point. They sometimes time out, and we don't, as viewers, I think, fully understand what's going on. Where sometimes you're like, okay, X person just timed out, but like, what are the rules? Because this person's a vegan, so they can't eat, this like horrible milkshake you made, but the other person can. Anyway, as a viewer, it feels so jumbled when you're watching a challenge finale versus here, even though there's actually way more movement and you're like, oh, this person's going here. And it's not necessarily as a viewer in the editing, like it's this thing's happening here. You're still on leg 2. This person's on leg 3. But because of that production aspect, I felt like really I could write the story out pretty easily. So I appreciated learning the production.
I'm glad you appreciate it.
Yeah,
I think it also
again. I've watched the other versions. Not great.
Well, part of the reason why I think it was potentially even more natural seeming this episode was the fact that our C camera, which had been covering BTS for the entire rest of the show, we had to devote that to challenges just because of the amount of stuff going on for this episode. So we ran BTS on just a GoPro, and like Tyson, our story producer, was just like, walking around with the GoPro at all times. And to be honest, I probably didn't even notice it a lot of the time. So led to, I think, even more like authentic kind of BTS stuff than even in the other episodes.
Yeah.
Hey, take your
Well,
time.
we ultimately we'll get there, but there were some winners to this show. But if if we think about it, was there a real winner to this show that wasn't the winner of the money? Because Hatch
Nebula.
did win Hit the Ball with a Rock.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I thought you're saying I'm the winner because yes, I want to watch the show.
Yep.
I thought this was a
I think
great
they were getting pretty
illustration of how
bored.
long it was taking.
Yeah,
You,
them
you
just
would
squatting like that. What the?
you would think that if you're in a theme park, you might think of some stuff to do to kill some time, but and I guess they did, in fairness. But actually, in genuine fairness, I think the reason why they were hanging out playing that there is because like we were waiting around for Forign to get eliminated for them to do so. But actually, not that entire time because like that that wasn't going to happen until they got to the table. So they could have gone and rode roller coasters. Nothing was stopping them. Um, but no, they ultimately decided it was better to play hit ball with rock on dirt road.
Seemed like they were having a good time.
Well, you also saw there like our emotional support human for the entire season, which was Robbie, the VW bus driver, who was just like always really fun to have around. Because like I don't know, all of us were like very stressed and probably not the most fun to hang out with. But like Robbie he was just there. He's like a full time VW bus guru basically. Like he owns a bunch. He refurbishes them. He goes around and like teaches other people who buy them how to refurbish them. He describes himself as a analog nomad because he does like the digital nomad thing, except that like his job is like very physical and he travels around the country in his van teaching other people how to fix their van and stuff. So like I don't know, he was always really chill, nice to be around, and like was I think everyone got along with him really well, which was great because you never see him on camera really in this because he's always just behind the wheel, and we kind of didn't want the audience to think about who's behind the wheel because we wanted the contestant to be behind the wheel, but turns out nobody drove stick.
Would that be a disadvantage if you're
I think
driving?
it'd be a huge disadvantage.
Yeah.
Right? That was a lot of talking time.
I guess, yeah. Yeah. I mean, we in a perfect world, they would have switched out, but like,
true.
Getting
in a perfect world, they all
bus,
drive stick.
Yeah. Well, in a perfect world, we would have gotten like the real refurbished VW buses that are like a brand new, all automatic, stuff like that. But we could not find one. And ultimately, this one had more character. And what Robbie told us was like, I could teach someone how to drive stick, but if the van is going to break for anything, it's because of someone shifting poorly. So we didn't want to risk that. So that's why Robbie was always behind the wheel.
Yeah.
Smart moves.
Well, ultimately, it feels like pretty much a foregone conclusion here that Forign is going to be the final person voted out. And that is what happens. He walks off. And again, I feel like this was my favorite reveal. I think it was just so pitch perfect because he was just so embedded in his role. And I loved that like he was like, well, I'm not just going to say, we have to make this fun. Like, what do you guys think I am? And it's like, what are they supposed to say in that moment? Right? So you have to just be like,
baby boy.
Just tell him, just tell him. And his face just goes through like, I think all 5 stages of grief into just like, oh, you sons of it was just so good. It's just so good. Forign was so fun on the show.
Well, it's like in an instant, you can see even with just like his like body language and emotion, like he thinks he's in the position of power there, where like he has something to reveal, and then it immediately flips to realizing that it's actually everyone else who has something to reveal. Which is like you can just see that in his face and in his body language, where like he's like looking proud, looking ready to be like, I got y'all. And then he realizes he got, which is
his
so fun.
His whole vibe changes. He was not happy. I
mean, it's quite a double whammy to be voted out and then have this,
especially that close to the end. Yeah,
yeah.
I felt bad. Yeah,
and he tried That's what
He
you
really
want in your
did.
contestants, right? When Steven is voting, first of all, I was like, "Is this allowed?" Uh, Steven's voting, and he's like, "Georgia, you need to vote for him. It's him. It's him. You gotta vote for him." And Steven's just like putting his votes in.
I also
I
love the
appreciate
cut back to Stephen and Georgia, just like looking as like dejected as possible. Like they're looking, they're sitting at the table like they just like witnessed puppy murder or something. Which is just like, and then you go off to like their confessionals, and then they're like super fine. It's just like one of the
Mhm.
most manipulative looking cuts I think we have. Like in terms of like seeing the contestants being manipulative, I think,
Mhm.
especially emotionally a bit. But yeah, it was that was a fun sequence.
I also enjoyed the shot of them. I actually replayed it once just to see it again of them learning that they were over 3 hour or 3.5 hours. Just to see everyone's exact reaction of like, oh damn, we screwed up,
Mm-hmm.
and how just committed they are to the roles.
I thought
Um,
Steven cheered, so I had to rewatch it because I was like, "Did he just say yes?" Because at least Forign, again, extra like, oh, throwing stuff on the floor, love it. But I was like, "Did Steven say yes?" Like, that's great.
yeah, I don't think he did, but
No, he
yeah.
didn't. I did rewind, but there, I think it was just like a very fake boo tomato tomato reaction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think these are always some of the most fun moments of the show of just like watching those moments and knowing that like those reactions are 100% manufactured,
Yep.
like not an ounce of truth in them. It's just like so fun from this comic, especially Foreign always like overselling it. It's just
Yep.
like him like throwing his jacket down and stuff like
Unserious,
that.
unserious person.
Foreign is genuinely like everything you could ask of a contestant for a show like this. I mean, he
Mm-hmm.
really just like gave it his all. He was consistently entertaining. I'm so glad that he was part of the show. And
Yeah,
sad to see him go in this spot, but I'm so glad he lasted
yeah.
this long.
I would have loved to have seen him win, but did seem like the writing was on the wall for this episode. I think one thing that I will say as like slight additional context on him is like I've seen a lot of speculation, and I agree with it to an extent that like it's so obvious that he's like overselling it, all that, and like, but like knowing him in real life, he is like just constantly a character in a way that like to like he's such a like I don't know, at times like a caricature of himself
Mm,
basically, that like he kind of like always overdoes everything. Not like overdoes, it's charming, he's
Mhm.
always amazing to be around. But he's like constantly just like massive with his emotions and stuff. Like every time I see him in person, it starts with just like the absolute biggest greeting possible and like a massive hug, and in a way that like if you saw it in this show, you would think it's someone trying to create emotional,
Mhm.
manipulation or something. But no, it's just like genuinely him. And I think I don't know many people who are genuinely like that to the degree that he is. And therefore, I could see some, from an audience perspective, misreading some stuff as him acting, which is actually just like him in real life, basically.
Yeah,
and I
that
think
tracks.
when you think you're the snitch, it doesn't even matter what
Yep.
Foreign is doing.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. But that of course leaves Steven and Georgia. And we already kind of talked about like the dual
Yeah.
confessionals of like feeling bad. They're about to betray their teammate that they've been working with this whole time, wondering what the reaction's gonna be. And like I think like I love Steven on the show as well. Feel like he had that air of like I did it, right? Like I did it and now I just feel bad for them, you know?
Yeah.
Which is so like so deserved and so great. But and also so perfect for this moment. Whereas Georgia still felt to me like she was just all business, like the
Yeah.
whole way through. Which is perfect for her too. But it was very funny to see like their different sort of approaches to this final reveal. And yeah, like the setting was very fun. And the way that you guys had it, where you were like, close your eyes and raise your hands. And I mean, you couldn't have scripted a better like slow motion, like turning of the heads and then the facial reaction. Like it worked really well.
Yeah. Again, I mentioned this earlier, but like especially Steven, like you can really see it, like because it's similar to like we were talking about before, and like he believes, like you can see when he first opens his eyes, he's like looking proud. He's like, I've done it. We're about to find out. And like he feels like he's in the position of power.
Yep.
And some additional context is that I felt bad, but like we had to, it took about, I think, I want to say about 2.5 hours between finishing the last challenge, or rather finishing the elimination sequence and getting to that last shot. Because we had to quickly do confessionals. We had to run them down the gondola. We had to run all of our equipment down the gondola. We had to go to the hotel. We had, because this was filmed in the courtyard of the Hotel Colorado, which is right nearby. We had to set up this shot, which took like 60, 90 minutes. Then we had to go and do it. So like they spent like good 2.5 hours thinking through what's about to happen. And of course it's not. And then they get to that moment and it's not what they think it is. So it's like, it makes sense, I think, especially with that context, to understand why it's such a strong reaction, because they spent 5 days leading up to this and they've had hours to think about that moment of that reveal. And it's, and in an instant, something changes when they think everything is done. One more thing changes. So I think it's very fun.
Yeah, I think it's I don't know if it was intentional, but I think that like because all of the eliminated cast were there, it felt like their first instinct, because like they both think they're snitches. They don't need to look at the other person.
Yep.
In fact, I think in some ways they don't want to, because they're afraid of the look on their face.
Yes.
And so they notice that there are people beside them, and they both kind of pay attention to the people beside them first.
Well, I think it's
they
like
slowly look over.
Yeah, and it's like I think it's like the thing to do when you expect that you've won. You want to like look proud and look celebratory, you know, just letting the other person, like you think you're in the position of power, and therefore you're the one who's going to be all stoic and be like, you know, anyway. I just love that shot. I've rewatched it so many times. It definitely I was just playing it one more time. It definitely like lived up to my full hopes for how that would play out. Which was certainly blindsided them.
Yeah, it's a culmination, right, of all of your hard work into one shot almost, and that final reveal where again everyone knows but these two people. You've got this great confessional from them. Oh shucks, my bestie, like I just screwed them out. Oh well, and then they're not the main character. Just terrible.
Yep.
And it works so well that they had been a team for so long. Like the reaction I think is so much stronger because they were such a duo. Like if Georgia had like betrayed Steven for Forign at the end, I mean I'm sure Forign always is going to give a fun reaction, but like it wouldn't have quite have had as much depth as like that like look over. I love like the way that Steven processed it too, is like confusion, and then there was clearly so much relief for him of like, oh my god, I don't have to feel bad. But I'm so curious because I feel like I still don't know, and I can't wait to ask Georgia if we get a chance to talk to her, like how she was feeling in that moment, because she was a lot more quiet. I was like I was really trying to think about like what is going through her mind right now, because I don't think it was quite the same as Steve.
Yeah, I mean, in both cases, obviously, like there was a bit of a sense of relief that they had not backstabbed their friend, and all that. but yeah, no, I'll be curious to hear as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, she
Uh,
was just laughing, which I thought was the funniest reaction, where she's like, "Well, I don't know what okay, yeah." And then Steven's like, "Wait,
Hmm.
what? What happened?"
Yeah. The other moment that I like, which was brief, is turning the camera and seeing all the crew there,
Mm,
because I think the other part that I can't emphasize enough is just like, not only is this reality so powerful because you have these five other people next to you that are, all playing along with this false narrative of the truth, but like, I think potentially even more powerful is the 19 other people acting as crew who are all
mhm.
confirming your beliefs and who are not within the context of a show, which is like always like, it's not exactly reality, it's a show. But what is reality is like what, or at least what feels like reality, is all the crew who are telling you, not necessarily directly, but sort of indirectly, that this is true and this is not, because that's a part that like that feels outside the scope of the show, and obviously that a lot of the show is about that part being within the scope of the show, but it feels outside of the scope of the show, and therefore, even the small details, like I mentioned Robbie, like Robbie had one of the hardest jobs because he had the Robbie, the VW bus driver, because like
Mhm.
he was with the contestants at every single moment of the driving. And he was talking with them. And in fact, one of the first things he told us when we met him was he was bad at keeping secrets. And we were like, well, because like we had to tell him, because like he would have access to, he would find out. And therefore,
Mhm.
our policy was like, we would much rather people know so they know not to like
Yeah.
discuss that sort of stuff rather than not know and accidentally discuss something. Um, but like he did a great job. He didn't know anything, and like it was really down to everyone. Um, so I think it was certainly a powerful dynamic that helped instill that sense of that false reality. And I also just liked showing the crew, because this was a very logistically complex. Putting a show on the road is not easy. It's not easy making a show in the first place, and like a lot of what makes it work is just like a lot of sweat and effort by the people who have to like, you know, put lights in place, pack up the lights, move on to the next place. All these like little logistical details and stuff like that, which just compound and compound when you're, in three different locations a day. So big props to them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm super curious to hear from you because you've now, you finished releasing this show. It is, you know, uh, a pretty big departure in terms of like production size, right? From what you've been
Yeah.
doing before.
Hmm.
And like in terms of concept, it's pretty different as well. How do you feel like it went? Like, was this I think the show went really well. I think, from our perspective, the audience that is listening to
mhm.
us at least really seems to enjoy it. But like from a production side, did this feel like a successful experiment? Does this feel like something that you want to be doing more of in the future? Like, what is your view of it?
Yeah, I mean, generally quite pleased with the end result, and it felt like close to as good as it could have been, basically,
Mhm.
for this show format. Um, there were a lot of constraints that you know are not even, I think, necessarily immediately obvious to an audience member that the bare bones format placed. But the very premise of gaslighting everyone to think, that kind of thing, and a lot of those constraints spilled over into what was possible, or at least what we believed was possible in terms of execution,
Mhm.
and therefore, like, I think there were certainly like a lot of compromises that we had to do to make that work, um, and compromises that would not have been the case in a traditional competition show.
Right.
Um, and but like in terms of execution of this format, I feel like we got close to as good as it could have gotten. I mean, there are certainly some small details that like I wish we had done differently. And I think there is a question to be asked on like whether ultimately the format was worth the amount of compromise it took to do. Certainly worth it as an experiment, but like now knowing that, would I go back and do it again in the exact same way? I don't know. Maybe. I certainly don't feel like we had enough compromise that's like a clear no, but I'm just like, I don't know, haven't put that much thought into it. But in terms of like an exercise for, you know, a lot of the context that we come into this with, now every time I say context, Kamala Harris has made me, those memes now made me, it's like, I can't say context, but the context with which we go into that, it's like, it was certainly like a bit of an experiment of what Nebula could do. And that part of it, I was quite pleased about, because it certainly was not like everything went out without a hitch or, you know, or anything like that. You know, it was not smooth at every moment, but ultimately we scaled up into, you know, we've certainly done things at like a similar budget range before, but they've tended to be on set scripted. This was sort of by far Nebula's highest budget unscripted show, and that's a completely different beast. And it's and there's a lot less of that you can like plan in advance. It's a lot more like just like actual execution on the ground, especially something with a number of locations and prop pieces and various little things like that for, you know, in this case. So like I was very I was very pleased about basically the ability for the team to execute upon this. So anyway, it is kind of a long answer to your question, but it's something that I've been asked a lot. So something I put a lot of thought into. I personally, in the future, am really excited to build on basically what we learned with this one, because I think we've learned a lot about how to execute something of this rough format. And honestly, I think we've probably learned enough that like next time I'm not sure we need a big twist, or you know, next time I'm not sure that, you know, we need something that differentiates it on such a core fundamental level. You know, I think for this time it might have been overly ambitious to do something that is just like straight down the line traditional reality competition show without some sort of big differentiating thing, because like we don't have experience there. How, you know, how are we going to do better than people who have done this for decades? And not to say one show is like all you need to have that experience, but like, you know, at a certain point, I think it'll make sense for us to try, try to do something that is just, you know, and I've obviously done something similar with jet lag, but like try something that is like, I don't know, more like Survivor-esque. You have everyone on one location, you do more produced challenges and stuff like that. So yeah, genuinely, and I know this is kind of like the boring answer from an audience perspective, but from my perspective, running the company, like the thing that I'm most excited about is how much we learned. Cause like, I genuinely feel like there was a lot that we learned as producers. And what that means, it's like, I like whatever we learn, I like that because it means that like in the future, we can execute not on luck and not on anything like that, but just like on skill, on just knowing how to do things better, which is, you know, that's, you know, skill never goes away, at least hopefully, with this sort of thing. So it's like, that is like a hard thing that we are accumulating through time and should be linear in, got cameras inverted, that direction. You know, so yeah, but all around, I think, you know, we learned a lot. Seems like audience generally enjoys it. I think it was a good show ultimately, and therefore I'm excited for what's next.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like it was really impressive that you were able to scale up so much. Like this was a very ambitious sort of thing with multiple locations, with an entire cast and crew. In terms of like, you know, this versus jet lag, like it's obviously it's such a different beast. And the fact that like it came together so well, I think I mean, it's a testament to something. you're doing something right. I couldn't tell you what it is. Maybe you know better, but like, I think it makes me excited because I know you guys are so smart with format and with the way that you approach these shows, and it's exciting to hear that this is potentially opening up more avenues for stuff like this to come. So yeah.
Hopefully, yeah. And I think, to be honest, a lot of what it's shown sort of relating to that is like the ability for us to develop a format and then to a certain extent hand it off to really competent producers and cinematographers and just like executors, like people who are just able to take a show format and execute, which is great for us because like there's a lot of people who know how to do that really well, who work at Nebula and have been hired by Nebula and or like on contract and stuff. So like that part of it, we have great partners. So therefore, if we're just able to keep coming up with interesting formats to hand off to them, I think we're in a great spot.
Yeah.
Wow,
Cool.
that's so exciting. I can't wait to see where this goes.
Yeah, and there's also like another season of Jet Lag coming up really soon as well. So
yes, as yet unannounced the release date, but it'll be announced soon. In fact, I think when does this podcast go out?
Probably Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think it'll probably be announced today, if I'm remembering my dates correctly.
Ooh.
If as in the release date will be announced today. If I'm wrong, feel free to eviscerate me on Twitter, Jet Lag people. But actually, don't. I make mistakes and I have to remember.
Don't be rude. Yeah,
but I'm pretty sure we're announcing it today, if I remember correctly. So coming soon.
Very fun. All right, Sasha. Anything else?
No, I think that's it. That was my last question: is when's Jet Lag? What's next? So can't wait.
A good season. I like it at least. It was a fun one to film, and filming in Italy was. I really liked filming in Italy. It was a great location, good vibes.
Yeah, Italy's so
good
fun.
Snacks.
So I can't wait.
I just watched Ripley on Netflix, which films in Italy, and it made me really want to just like live in Italy for a while.
It's kind of at times depressing to go in Italy because like everything's so cheap. It's so nice, and like the food costs nothing, and everyone is just like vibing out, having a coffee or something.
Literally,
on the patio. It's like, what are we doing wrong here, guys?
And the food's so bomb. Oh
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sam, anything else from the Getaway that you wanted to bring up?
Not really. I really appreciate y'all taking an interest this season. I know this is not the last thing you're doing Getaway related, but it's the last with me. So I'm glad y'all enjoyed it. I'm glad y'all found it worth covering, and hopefully your audience listening to this, anyone who's on episode 5 of this probably found it interesting. So props to you for sticking around. But we had an interesting show, and I think it's especially an interesting show for the audience who like is willing to really engage with it and dive deeper. So I think whoever is still listening to this at hour 1 minute 24 at least of the runtime, we had to cut a little bit for production issues related to the cat. I don't know how much of the runtime that'll cut out, but like anyone who's still around here is clearly engaged a lot. So hopefully you've understood, I think, how to watch the show in the most interesting manner. So thanks to them as well.
Well, thank you for coming on, and to everyone who came on, Amy, Ben, and Adam as well. It was so much fun to talk to all of you, as well as the contestants who have come on. And I believe we are scheduled to talk to the final 3 contestants as well. So stay tuned for that. Very exciting. Very excited to talk to them. I think we're gonna have all of them on at the same time, so we can hear a little bit of a little mini reunion for the final 3 to see what their thoughts are now that it's aired.
I'm
so that'll be
very
fun.
Hear myself. That'll definitely be interesting.
We're really excited, and we're grateful to be in this partnership with y'all. So it's been such a fun ride.
Yeah.
All
right. Well, that is what we have for you then. Of course, when Jet Lag returns, you may know the date at this point if you're listening, but I don't. But when it does, we'll be back. We'll be talking some more Jet Lag, so stay tuned for that. Of course, there's plenty of other coverage going on. Big Brother first and foremost at the moment. But we're also talking some scripted TV. House of the Dragon just ended, and there's plenty of stuff. Find me on Twitch, and I'll be hanging out talking about things over there. Sasha, you got stuff going on.
Yes. Yeah, as always, I'm covering pop culture, vibes only. Listen, if you want to know what's going on in the world, in the pop culture life, check out Mess Magnets on Rob has a website / mess feed. And of course, if you love Below Deck, check out Below Deck right here on Rob has a podcast YouTube channel where Chappelle and I go live every Wednesdays. Listen, we have a fun little chat going on. The peanut galley kills it. So come check it out. And of course, also on We Know Scripted TV, Mike Bloom and I talk to your favorite reality TV contestants about their favorite scripted shows. So we just had Demi from The Bachelor, Bachelorette, Bachelor in Paradise world come talk about Shogun. Honestly, amazing show. Everyone should watch it. And a great podcast. So check all of that out. And of course, follow me on Twitter so you can keep up. And Taran, this has been so great to chat with you. Another season down.
Always fun to talk with you, Sasha. Sam, what should people be on the lookout for? Where should people find you?
Like game.
There you go.
As if they don't know Sam.
And of course, if you want to support Sam,
yes.
Jetlag, The Getaway, and their future endeavors, go hang out with Nebula and get a subscription.
Although, if you're watching The Getaway, it'd be weird to watch this podcast and not, I guess, already watch Getaway.
It does happen. Some people just like to listen to the podcast.
Yes, we have a few. Yeah.
Okay, well, fine. If you made it to episode 5 listening to this, you should probably actually watch the show, which means you have to subscribe to Nebula. So yeah, go for that.
There you go. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us here on our Getaway coverage all season long, and we will see all of you next time.